All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Keith Hooper. I'm here with our good friend John Solleder, and welcome to, we're going to be talking about a number of books, and we're going to start off with the ones that John and I wrote together, Moving Up. And I think it's real important to cover some very simple basics here, John. And I think it's important that we just let everybody know that, number one, okay, this is to give you some great information. Everything we're doing is free. If you want to get the book, oh, gee, that might be a good idea. Go to Amazon, and they can order right there on Amazon, right, John?
They sure can, and that's what the book looks like. Moving Up 2020, and that's what it looks like in Spanish. Oops, there we go. And Keith, there's a lot of stories in here about Immunotech people, and not Immunotech people for that matter, but let's talk about the beginning, because that's what the first chapter is about. And when we were speaking with our good friend, our Senior Vice President of North America, J.C. Martinez, he had a great suggestion. He said, hey, can you guys talk a little bit generically about the books and the titles and the subjects, but also about Immunotech specifically? So, Keith, why don't you tell my In the Beginning story a little bit?
Well, I think I'm just going to read the first chapter here. Let's give people a little flavor of what we're going to be talking about. In the beginning, in 1983, the economy is having the wind sucked out of it, and I'm finishing up my undergraduate degree at Seton Hall. My dad was an electrician, and I had spent some of my summers working for him. The foreman was a nice guy who figured that my athletic background, I could curl pipe and get coffee. So it turned out I was reasonably successful at remembering how the journeymen took their coffee, but I had absolutely no aptitude for anything mechanically. Christmas of that senior year in college, my father fired me. What an idea! He said that I'd be better figure out some other way to make a living, because it definitely would not be with my hands. And that really just lays it out. So everyone should be fired by their father. I think that's part of the criteria to be successful.
Yeah,
You got to be fired by your father, and we've had a lot of references to that, John.
Well, Keith, I was fired by my father. It was a true story, because we were working. It was Christmas time, and I went to wire something, and I wound up holding something wrong, and I started an electrical fire. And my father said, I cannot afford to have you on this job. And he literally said, go home. And he fired me. And it's interesting because he said to me, you have 10 left thumbs. And for somebody who's a mechanic, whether you're working on automobiles or electricity or anything where you can get hurt, having 10 left thumbs is not a good idea. And while I was hurt on the one hand, on the other hand, I said, he's absolutely right. I need to develop my other skills. And ironically, a few short months later, April 18th of 1983, I was selling health club memberships at a Nautilus facility, old Nautilus, if you remember the old Nautilus equipment that Arthur Jones created. There were a lot of clubs that had that equipment in it. I was working in one in northern New Jersey. And a guy who I had wrestled with in high school, Tommy Husted, came in one day and he started to tell me about a business opportunity. And he said, for $32, you can have your own business. And I said, wow, well, $32, that's a lot of money. In 1983, that was a lot of money to me anyway. And yet I trusted Tom. And that's part of this business, folks, is trusting the person who introduces you to, in our case, Immunotech. In that case, it was another company, but it was my introduction to the network marketing space. I knew nothing about this business. Now, my mom had friends who were in Mary Kay. My mom had friends who were in Tupperware. There was a guy who used to come to the door keys selling Fuller Brush, the old Fuller Brush company. And anyway, when I was a little boy, I used to wash the stairs with some product that we had bought from Fuller Brush. So maybe I was meant to be in a direct selling industry, because at 3-4 years old, I remember washing the steps with this thing. But that was the beginning for me, 1983.
Well, John, if you said something, we're going to take a few minutes, folks, as you come through this, and we're going to encourage you to go get the book. Because it's one thing to hear us talk about it. It's another thing to be able to digest it. Okay, it's like telling you about a great meal. We can tell you all about it, but you want to experience it yourself, so you can get it on Amazon. But John, you made a statement that, the beautiful thing about what we do in direct sales network marketing is it's a skill set. It's not a talent. Okay. You can learn the skills. You can become a master craftsman. And that's what we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks as we go through moving up 2020. And it really should have been, John, the title should have been 20.20. Okay, 2020, because perfect vision of the perfect business, because that's really what's in this book, is to give you the vision of what you can do. So if you think about it, so that skill set, I don't want to just pass over that so quickly, John. So maybe explain a little bit more about developing these skills.
Well, here's the thing that I learned early on. I started April 83. I joined the business April 83. May 83, I learned my really first valuable lesson, and that was from President Ronald Reagan, of all people, who spoke at my college commencement and said that way back 1932, when he got out of college, the economy was very similar to what it was in 1983. It was bad. It was not a lot of opportunity in 1932. It was not a lot of opportunity in 1983. And he said he found a mentor. It was suggested to him by a wealthy businessman that he find a mentor, and he found somebody in the broadcast business, and he got into broadcasting, and one thing led to another, wound up in Hollywood, and the rest is history. That's kind of what happened to me at a much lesser level. Was that in June of 83, I went to my first big meeting, and I heard some statements, okay, one of which was that the business could be learned. And to your point, Keith, what I recognized were that the skill sets could be learned, because there were people in that room. In the meeting room I was in Hartford, Connecticut, had about 1,000 people in it. And of those 1,000 people, some had formal educations, like I had just achieved by graduating from Seton Hall in 1983. Others had never gone to college, and yet their incomes had no reference point to whether they did or did not have a formal education. So what that told me then was that anybody can learn a business. Matter of fact, that particular company, of the 4 top earners, 3 of them did not have a college education. So what that told me was that the business could be learned. I heard it said, and then I saw it with my own 2 eyes. I saw people achieving that had no formal education, and yet they were doing what the company told them to do, what their uplines told them to do, what the training classes told them to do. One of those skills were the 10 penny principle, for example, which was really pretty simple, because anybody could do it, because our business is about anybody being able to do it and achieve. And that was to put 10 left pennies in your left pocket first thing in the morning. And every time you talk to a prospect about your product or your opportunity or both, you move from your left pocket to your right pocket. That became a skill set for me. And I've built 5 organizations, Immunotech being the last and final one of my career. All 5 I built with 10 penny principle, by putting 10 pennies in my left pocket the day I would start the organization. And every time I talked to somebody, whether they joined or not, I moved the penny from my left pocket to my right pocket. And it gave me the skill set to learn how to talk to people. And Keith, I know you had a good mentor in Bob Schmidt that kind of taught you some similar things.
Yeah, and we went through that, but I want to bring back to this mentorship. Okay. Is, I'm fascinated, there's a statement, leaders are readers. Okay. You got to read the books. Okay. And the mentors that are out there. So I want to do 2 things on the mentorship. I think one of the books that was very impactful on me was the book, How to Be Rich by J. Paul Getty. Okay. Not how to get rich, how to be rich. There's a difference. Okay. And that was a very, very powerful book. And then The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace T. Wattles. And then, obviously Think and Grow Rich follows after that. But, this mentorship thing, John, the internet is full of, what's the kind words that we use? Forget the kind words. They're full of a bunch of fakes. Okay. They're fake mentors. They may have done it once by accident. They got lucky, and they did that, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and they're still riding that horse, if you will. Okay. But it's important to find the mentor. Okay. Whether you're reading the books, the classics that we think you would, with Jim Rohn and all the stuff that's there. And then when you're moving to where we're at today, just want to make sure that the people you're listening to are people who are doing it today, John, today. Not 20 years ago, and not what they refer to in the music industry as one-tune wonders, right?
Well, and that was part of the skill acquisition that I got over the years was that the skills go back a long way, but they still work today. It'll be 40 years in April that I'm doing network marketing on a full-time basis. And that makes me old, yes, but it also makes me somebody who's had to change with the times. And here's what I've found through the years. The techniques don't really change. The strategies don't really change. The technologies may have changed. When I started, there was no internet, for example. Okay, when I started, for example, with Immunotech, this was in 1996. Okay, I hopefully you can all see that. That's called a cassette tape. Some people don't even know what that is. And I'll tell you a funny story that I've shared with some people in the industry and with some of our people, that when I put this tape out in 1996, I was a single guy, and I put it out, and my now 18-year-old son, who's in our business, by the way, he's actually one of our top retailers every month. He pops up on the board in the U.S. Fred S. That's my son. He's 18. He's in college. And Fred found that tape in the garage about 2 years ago. And I shared this with Keith and with JC and with some of the other folks in Immunotech. And he found it and he brought it in the house here. And he started to say to me, Dad, what is this? And of course, I started giving him the sales pitch about when I met Gustavo Bunos and John Molson and, the whole deal. And he goes, I don't care about any of that. He goes, what is this? He did not know what a cassette tape was because he's 18 years old. He has not seen a cassette tape in his life, right? So that's that's just one of many things that have gotten better and easier. Of course, today we got all this great technology that we didn't have back then. But my point about that is, hey, look, folks, it still comes down to one thing, and that's communicating with other human beings about your Immunotech business. If you communicate with enough people on a daily basis, whether you use the 10 penny principle, whether you just do it by habit, most importantly, do it consistently, contact new people about this wonderful product that we've been given and this opportunity that we've all been blessed with. So if you do that, you can build a business. What do you say, Keith?
And John, I'm just going to come back to just a little bit on this first chapter. A mind expanded can never go back to what it was. Okay, if you expand something, if you're in the metal business and you expand pipe or whatever and you expand it back, you can never take it back to that smaller size. Well, your brain's the same way. And are you ready to learn? Are you ready to change? Are you disgusted enough with where you're at, okay, to make a change? Then if that's the case, what is the vehicle you're going to use? Now, John and I have chosen to use Immunotech and Immunical because it makes such a unique such a unique opportunity with a product that changes people's lives and allows us to make, reasonable to a little more than reasonable incomes. But the idea is, are you ready to make that change? So once again, I'm going to encourage you, you can pop over to Amazon, click up Moving Up. 2020 is the newest one there. And, it's on Amazon. The author, once again, is John Solleder, Solleder. All the links will be on the video when it's up there, and you can follow it over. But, John, I think as we close out this first chapter, it's just real important to get the groundwork laid, okay? Make sure that you're looking for the right mentors. Make sure you're doing what you're doing for the right reason, okay? And then invest the time and energy to make that all come to fruition.
Well, and Keith, just to close that, when I think about in the beginning, the genesis of Immunotech research, right? End of 1996, my mother gets introduced to Immunical by a medical professional. 1997, I find out a little bit more about the business and decide to take a serious look at it. And I go to Montreal. And my now good friend, John Molson, who I did not know at the time, gives me the tour of the building. And, you go around, you meet executives, you shake hands with people whose names you're not going to remember, and they're not going to remember your name the next day. But I'll never forget this as long as I live, folks. And that was my first meeting with Gustavo Bunos. And at that meeting, Keith, and this is a perfect place for us to close this out today, that first meeting when Dr. Bunos came into his office, and his office was kind of a mess, and he was disheveled, okay? If you ever met Dr. Bunos, which most of you listening to this, unfortunately, didn't have that privilege that Keith and I did many times. Kind of had his tie off to the side, his hair was a mess. If you could picture Albert Einstein, you could picture Dr. Bunos, by the way. Genius doesn't worry about appearance, by the way. So I'm never going to apologize for mine again. Anyway, I'm taking that liberty. But anyway, let me tell you the serious story, folks, because it's relevant for what we're talking about here. When Dr. Bunos sat down and said, I'm sorry, I just got back from Italy. Sorry, my office is a mess, blah, blah, blah. And I had two colleagues with me that were also looking at the Immunotech company. And I said, "Oh, Doc," I knew he was Italian descent. So I said, "Doc, were you on vacation?" He goes, "No, no, no." Because I was at the Vatican Library studying what Hippocrates had written about the human immune system in the original Latin. And I knew right then and there, and I'm not the sharpest crayon in the box, folks, but I knew right then and there that I was in the presence of greatness and brilliance, and I had to be part of this thing. And here we are now going on 26 years later, and we're still a part of it. And Keith, I know you were there before I was, so why don't you finish off with your story quick?
Well, we'll get into that next week, folks, because you're going to want to come back. There's a lot of great people you're going to meet. But once again, this is Keith Hooper, along with my good friend John Solleder. We'll be seeing you next week.